Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee.
Good afternoon. Welcome to In Session. I'm your host, Dr. Fadaee Talla, and I'll be with you for the next 2 hours here on Radio Hamra. Studio number to call in, 310-441-0555. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, so you can call in with any questions related to clinical psychology, including any emotional or psychological issues, parenting issues, and relationship issues as well. You can also follow me on Twitter or Instagram or like my page on Facebook to get updates on the show or suggest topics or books for the program. And the shows are uploaded at the end of each week to my SoundCloud page and podcast on iTunes. Again, our studio number, 310-441-0555. So I have to do some book reviews today because I didn't have a show on Monday. And because of that, I'm also joined by some guests who were supposed to be with me Monday night, but unfortunately we didn't have a live show. But Neda Fadaee Talla Khelghati from the Iranian student group at UCLA are here, and they'll be joining me later on in the show to talk about a peace panel event they are having at the UCLA campus next Thursday, November 21st, but we'll talk more about that in later segments of the show. But to begin with, I'll do the book review from last week, but the book for this week is Hive Mind, The New Science of Tribalism in Our Divided World by Sarah Rose Kavanaugh. Hive Mind, The New Science of Tribalism in Our Divided World. And so there's always polarization in politics, but it's become even worse lately. And so this book looks at some of the psychology of why and how we're affected by others, and that emotions and thinking can be very contagious. So looking forward to, I started it, but reading the rest of that and sharing it with you on Monday night's show. But the book that I'll talk about today is Inferior, How Science Got Women Wrong, and the New Research That's Rewriting the Story by Angela Saini. And I really, really enjoyed this book. So it's looking at research that essentially for a long time had been saying that women are inferior to men, and how, as the title says, how science got women wrong. And so she goes through the history of science related to women in different areas of life and actually follows the lifespan starting before birth and looking at babies and then women and then even into old age and looking at theories related to menopause. And so I found the book fascinating because when we look at research and science, people often think, well, science is telling us the truth. Science is this self-correcting field, so it's always going to figure things out and get things right. But as there was a quote in the book, something along the lines of, science doesn't exist in a political vacuum. Science is affected by the ways people think about things, the ways the scientists think about things, culture and society. All those things still affect science. So as much as we'd like to think that there is no influence of these things because science is away from those things, we have to be aware that the scientists will bring their own thoughts and values into their research, and that will affect the results they get, the interpretations they make, and all of those types of things. And also related to that, what's so important is that, you know, people can say, oh, I think women are this way or men are that way. But when it's coming from scientific fields, this unfortunately can further reinforce stereotypes. It can further reinforce even oppression and persecution, because now we feel like there's some kind of scientific justification for treating people less than or thinking less of some people, in this case, women. Also, Angela Saini has another book called Superior, which is related to, in a way, this same topic, but about race and the return of race science. And I've purchased that book and looking forward to reading it probably in a few weeks, but kind of the same kind of theme where science would say, okay, well, let's say African Americans are less intelligent than whites, using tests that were made by whites and that were already prejudiced in certain ways and looking for certain things, and then confirming that, and of course, again, perpetuating these myths that somehow certain people are more intelligent, less intelligent, superior, inferior, which causes lots of damage. So as scientists, people have to be very careful that what they are creating as far as their theories and what their research tries to support or prove or disprove has huge impacts on society. And so I read it or saw an interview she was giving, and she said that, of course, she was looking at the theories that she talks about in this book, but also looking at the scientists themselves, trying to understand them better, because that gives us a lot of insight. And so one main takeaway from this book is that men and women are not that different. And on a lot of characteristics where we think they are so different, and we've heard things, and I've heard things, men are better at math, at spatial awareness, these types of things. The differences seem to be very, very small, if anything at all. But oftentimes we've been told for so long that this is the truth that we unfortunately take it as some kind of actual truth about us, rather than maybe just some scientists who had some theories at a certain point in time. And so I was thinking about how when we think of science and we think it's such an objective thing, of course we're affected by the assumptions we have. So I was thinking of, if I gave you a deck of cards and I said, hey, can you check if this deck is okay before we start playing? And so the assumption is it's going to have 52 cards. And if you count it and you get 52, you're like, yeah, it's right. But if you got 51 or 53, you'd probably say, wait a second, did I count it right? And you'd recount the cards to see. But you wouldn't recount if you got 52. So this shows us that when we're looking for something, we're more likely to find it. And so if we see something that confirms our belief, we think, yeah, that's the truth. If we find something that's not consistent with our beliefs, we tend to write it off. And that's what you see scientists doing. If they found something that said, oh, look, men are more intelligent than women, because they already had that assumption, they said, see, this proves it, that men are more intelligent than women. But if they found something that said, no, they're actually close to equal, oftentimes scientists would not pay attention to that or think something was wrong in the data. Now, she goes through different types of research. One of them that's also important, and it relates to books I've talked about before, is brain research. And as I talked about in last week's book, The New Mind Readers by Russell Poldrack, when people do brain imaging studies, we can think that it's very clear-cut what's going on. But actually, there is a fair amount of interpretation that's happening. And so sometimes they'll put graphs and they'll say, look, this is a men's brain and this is a woman's brain, and look how different they are. And they're very colorful, usually showing the areas that are activated in blue and red and different colors. And we think this is very real and very concrete evidence of a difference. But as she points out, this science often is a lot more up to interpretation, and we can see how the scientists at times can look for certain things and then confirm what they are looking for. And so she makes this point in the book that we have to be very careful about the articles that we read about science. And so newspapers and now online, they love to pick up what you can call sexy headlines, and sometimes sexist headlines, where it says something like men are this way and women are that way. And people want to click on that and see what it says. But very rarely, if it says men and women aren't that different, people don't pick up those stories as much. And they don't get as interested, so they don't get as much attention. But when you actually take a closer look at the science, you see that it's much more balanced and showing that men and women really aren't so different in a lot of ways. Are there differences? Absolutely. She also talks about, sometimes we think, well, this is woman's work and this is men's work, and it's always been that way. But when things have been a certain way for so long and in all of our own individual lives, it's at times hard for us to think of things as different. So, for example, we think of blue for a baby boy and we think of pink for a baby girl. And it almost seems like those things are like innate. Like, how could they be different? But it wasn't in this book, but I forgot which book it was in, that I read last year, that it actually said there was a while where blue was actually for girls and pink was for boys. And that was just accepted back then. So a lot of times the things we think are so innate and always were this way and have to be this way, they're actually assumptions that we have and things that seem to be true because we've always seen them in that manner. And so with work, we see the same thing where we think, well, a man is out and making the money and doing those things, and a woman's work is to stay home and to take care of the kids and the cooking and those kinds of things. But when we look at different societies around the world, especially hunter-gatherer societies, we see that this isn't actually always the case. There's huge variability in the types of work and the amount of work that women do in different cultures and different societies. And it doesn't seem to be some innate thing that women are better at this and men are just better at that, and that's it. It's much more gray. So in some societies, women are even involved in hunting. Not only that, a lot of societies and cultures now, these hunter-gatherer societies, we see that the women provide a good amount, or even sometimes a more consistent amount of the food that's being consumed. So it's not that they're not involved and not doing much and it's not important, but actually they are doing much more. Or when it comes to sexual behavior, this is a big area where there's a lot of research and a lot of theories about men and women and how they're different and how it's been quote unquote proven one way or the other. But she had a title related to female sexual behavior, which was choosy but not chaste, meaning that it's not that women have no desire for sexual interactions or sexuality, but that society has pressured them in certain ways. Men have tried to control them and part of what helps with that is to say they don't have much of a desire, or it's not healthy for them to have that desire when it doesn't seem to be the case. And so you see evolutionary biologists who are trying to quote unquote prove that women don't really have as much of a desire as men, or that women don't have any benefit from being with multiple men, but men have lots of benefits to be with multiple women. And there's something to that in some ways, but to say there's no reason for the woman doesn't seem to be true. One example of this is some cultures believe in something called partible paternity, meaning that more than one male can be the father of the child. They don't see it as kind of like black and white, that it's one person that's the father. And so when a woman has been with multiple men, she's more likely to get resources from multiple men, or they're more likely to have that child be protected. So there could be evolutionary advantages even for that woman to be with more than one man. Or genetic heterogeneity. If you have children from multiple fathers, then it's more likely that none of your kids will all carry the same type of mutation or genes that might not be good, and that way you're more protected to make sure your offspring have a higher survival rate. So, or overall survival rate. So the book gets into the science at various ages from, again, that boys and girls are different before birth. And are there some differences? Yes, there does seem to be some differences, but the differences tend to be quite small. And this is also something we see with races, where what we actually observe is there's more diversity within a given race than there is between races. So there's more diversity within men and women than there really is between men and women, but we like to think of them as so different. So I really found the book fascinating and very interesting, and I highly recommend it to anyone. Actually, I saw online there are some campaigns to try to get this book into schools. She's in the UK, Angela Saini, so I think it started in the UK, but also in other countries, because I think it's so important for both boys and girls, men and women, to become aware of the science and the history of the science, and to recognize that a lot of the things we assume that are truths about men and women and how we're different don't always tell the full story. And so I really enjoyed this book. That was Inferior: How Science Got Women Wrong and the New Research That's Rewriting the Story by Angela Saini. And after the break, I'll be joined by Neda and Talla from the UCLA Iranian Student Group, and we're going to talk about the peace panel that is coming up next Thursday, November 21st on the UCLA campus. We'll be right back. Welcome back. As I mentioned before the break, I'm now going to be joined by two students from the UCLA Iranian Student Group. So I'm going to introduce you to them with some brief bios before I bring them on. So Neda Fadaee is a young Iranian American who was born and raised in Los Angeles. After attending Los Angeles Pierce College and obtaining her associate degrees in STEM and social sciences, she transferred to UCLA as an ecology, behavior, and evolution major. She is currently a senior and is serving as the director of academic outreach for the Iranian Student Group at UCLA. She aspires to become a conservation veterinarian to unify her love of animals and the environment. Neda, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And then, so Talla Khelghati is a third-year economics and public affairs student at UCLA and is currently serving as the vice president of the Iranian student group after having served as a chair of finance last year. She originally hails from San Jose, California, and is happy to be living in Los Angeles with such a vibrant and rich Iranian American population. She aspires to practice law and then become a professor one day. Talla, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
And as I mentioned before, you guys have planned a great event, and that I'm very grateful and very happy that I'll get to be a part of, and that is the Peace Panel, which will be next Thursday, November 21st, at the UCLA campus, and I believe it's from 6 to 8 p.m. at Royce Hall, and we can get to some of those details. But Ned, I kind of said some like the generals about it, but can you tell us more about this event, the Peace Panel that you guys have planned?
Yeah, sure. So basically, Los Angeles is one of the greatest diasporas for the Iranian population. And we wanted to hold an event, which is something ISG has never done before, a panel on peace. And we wanted to unite all the different minority backgrounds that make up the Iranian population.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason it's so important is because we're student leaders, and we see not discrimination really. Personally, I don't see that, but we see like stratification between the different Iranian groups. And I feel like it's so important to, once we graduate, to learn how to overcome these this separation between all of us, and to be able to become a united front, like just a united Iranian community. Because like at the moment, I don't feel that we're like that. Yeah.
Well, I think you're right, and it kind of in a way relating to what I was talking about in the last segment about men and women and seeing them as different, but then recognizing there's so much diversity within those, and they're not necessarily so different from the outside. But yeah, within the Iranian community, there is lots of diversity, and different from religious backgrounds to cultural, even backgrounds, even to language at times, and different dialects. And there's a lot of ways you use, the stratification and disunity can be there. And so I think it's so important, even first just within the Iranian community, to build that unity. And I think you guys have planned this event to try to take a step in that direction. I think that's great, and I'm very happy to get to be a part of it. And so what was when you say peace, like, was it peace as in like within, because obviously we're not talking about a specific war, but was it more just to be unified, to then be more peaceful within each other? I was wondering what that term, also so I can think about what I have to say next week when I'm there. But what was that term peace, like what was that? And I think Talla can also add about the motivations for the event, but or maybe you can say where. Yeah.
Sure. So I think Neda touched on this, but I was talking to you guys outside, and we were talking, and I was saying that Maxine Waters said something that I think is really profound, which is that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And what that means is that if you don't have an organized front, if you don't come together as a unified community to advocate for yourself, which I feel like the Iranian American community honestly lacks in a lot of ways, then you won't get what you want out of may it be national politics or in terms of societal interpretations of what the community is and what it's all about. And so I think specifically within our community, I think largely the stratification exists amongst religious lines. So we have like Iranians that are Baha'i, Zoroastrian, Jewish, Muslim, secular, and all these communities siphon themselves off into separate groups and without a lot of cross collaboration. So when we say peace, we mean dispelling the myths amongst ourselves that exist regarding the different groups that are in our Iranian American or Persian community.
No, I think that's very important. I think our culture is also very hierarchical. Like we look at who's status and who's better and worse, and trying to make sure we look a certain way to other people. And I think unfortunately that contributes to some of this of like paying so much attention, like quote unquote, where do you come from or who are you, and creating divisions rather than unifying. The way I like to look at this, I've been thinking about it recently, is like it's very important to understand your heritage and your roots and those things. That's not bad. I think the problem comes when we start to compare based on those things of who's better or who's worse. So because I have this background, it makes me better than other people. I think that's the wrong way to go, rather than, I understand and recognize and connect with my beautiful heritage and the history of certain people, but it doesn't mean that makes my people, quote unquote, better than other people. I think that's where we have to be very mindful of how we think about those things. And the analogy I use is when you have kids, and like everyone loves their kids because they're beautiful and they love them, and every child is unique, but you wouldn't say my baby is better than another baby, or my child is
Hopefully not.
better than, yeah. So we can look at our future that way, look at the kids with that way of saying, I love my child and I think it's wonderful and beautiful, but I don't think he or she's better than other children. And so our past, we can say, I love my history, but does it make me or make my history better than yours? And so I think we can hopefully have both, that understand ourselves and be connected to that, but don't use it as a way of, putting others down and putting ourselves above one another.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point you make, and that something we hope to touch on the panel is the idea of educating our community on the history of others that exist within the community. So in the existence of like Iranian Saturday schools or day schools that teach young Iranian American children, this is the history of our community. These are the diversities that exists, and here's how we can all get along. I think these structures and these institutions don't exist like nationally right now, and our community could really benefit from these kinds of things.
I totally agree. And so, as I mentioned, I'm very fortunate to be part of this panel next week. And maybe, Neda, you can tell us a bit more about who else is on the panel. So, again, if you're in the Los Angeles area, hopefully you can come out to UCLA next week, Thursday, November 21st. But yeah, who else will be on the panel?
So we have 4 panelists, and of course, you are one of them.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to be there.
And so our other 3 panelists, one of them is Dr. Benjamin Rad. He is a UCLA professor, and he specializes in, or his background is political science. Oh, and I should also mention that this is an interdisciplinary panel, meaning that every panelist is very well versed in their own background, and then with their knowledge, they can talk about how we can overcome the issues we have with their own perspectives. And so our first panelist, Dr. Benjamin Rad, his background is political science. And then our another panelist is Dr. Nushin Jahangiri. She is a doctor at Kaiser Permanente, but she's also on the core education group of the Zoroastrian Center. And she was born and raised in Iran, and she got her religious license, I guess you would say, her credentials in Iran. And then when she came here, she started educating teens on the Zoroastrian culture, religion, faith. And then one of our other panelists is Dr. Nader Saidi, who is a professor at UCLA as well, and his expertise is on the Baha'i faith. I actually took his class, and he focuses a lot on peace. His research is a lot on peace. And our moderator is Dr. Nushin Valizadeh. And we were able to get into contact with her because another person on our board took her class. And over the summer, she was teaching a sociology class. And she does a lot for the community. So she also teaches at USC. And she also has an MBA in finance, and she's also part of let me see what it says, the USC Center for Race and Equity. So yeah, she cares a lot about like just peace in general, but since she also is Iranian American, she's very interested to see like what everyone has to say about peace within the Iranian American community.
Nice. Yeah, and I'm very interested to hear what everyone has to say, along with myself, because I have to think about what I want to say. But I've definitely been thinking about it because I'm excited to be a part of the event. And I think it's great you guys are bringing people with different backgrounds, interdisciplinary group, which also speaks to what we're just talking about, bringing people different backgrounds, whether it's educational, religious, whatever it is, and recognizing that we have to work together. So again, if you're in the LA area next Thursday, November 21st, and tickets are free, right?
Yeah, so it's open to the public and it's free. There's no, you don't have to get a ticket, just come the day of. And we'll be really happy to see you there.
Yes, I'll be happy to see you guys there too. And maybe, we'll talk a bit more about the event, but it might be good to talk about the Iranian student group in general. Now, I went to UCLA myself, and they have cultural shows, the Iranian student group, and I was in the 2005 cultural show, and I did some Baba Karam dancing. Now I'm expecting this time around I'll do less Baba Karam, maybe some, but probably less than I did last time. But I know that the Iranian student group has been around for a long time, and actually we were talking about this before we came on the air about how this type of an event is not something that has been really done before, which I think is a great direction that the Iranian student group is taking. But Talla, since you're the vice president, maybe you can tell people a bit more about the Iranian student group at UCLA.
Yeah, I'd love to. So the Iranian Student Group, or we call it ISG, is a network that hopes to unite the Iranian American diaspora on campus at UCLA. And we feel an especially heavy burden to do so, given the fact that UCLA is such an Iranian American or Persian campus, and that we are in Tehran. There's so much Iranian culture around us, and so we hope to serve as a home for Iranian American students who come to campus and aren't sure how to get more in touch with their culture, or have been in touch with their culture and want an entity on campus that reminds them of home, that gives them the sense of community. So we do this in a lot of ways. As you mentioned, and as Neda mentioned, this type of educational event is very new for us. The areas in which we focus more on are community building in the form of, we have events such as Osh Night. So we serve Osh to students. This is usually in the first few weeks of fall quarter. So when the freshmen are getting acquainted with campus, we usually do this in Bruin Plaza. So they see us, they know that we exist. And then from there we build on. We have things called mehmunis. So they're just glorified parties with a lot of Persian music, and it's there so that people can feel like, oh, there's a community of students here that are interested in these kinds of things. And then last year, our two biggest events, I would say, we had a fashion show with the help of PACI, the Persian American Cancer Institute, and we helped raise money for them. But also, this was an event that was to raise awareness about cancer within the Iranian American community. And then finally, I would say the event that you were a part of and that is the biggest one that we do is the culture show. So this is our culminating event. It happens at the end of spring quarter, and it really ties together all of the values and mission statements that I stated that we have. And we have dances and skits and songs and performances from Iranian American students for both the Iranian American community and the broader UCLA Los Angeles community to get in touch with what Iranian culture really means.
Very cool. Yeah, you guys are doing a lot of great things. I think actually that event, the fashion show, that was in the spring or
It was winter.
winter. Okay, because I think my dad and brother actually went. Was it in Ackerman?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think they went
Yeah.
to it. I can ask them. But yeah, I remember they were there, and I heard it was a great event.
It
But it
was.
seems like you guys are doing a lot of things on campus, trying to give a voice to the Iranians, I think, on campus, but also kind of like a home so people can come together and connect and feel, like you said, when especially freshmen coming from different cities, sometimes new experience, like things like the Osh Night could be a nice way to give them a sense of community and connection, which I think is so important, which I think is great. So the peace panel again is next Thursday. So if you're in the LA area, just show up, right? I know parking at UCLA, when I went there, it was like $7 and it became $8 a day. Now I don't even know how much it is a day, but parking I know is, maybe it's good to Uber there or find other ways too, but it's in Royce Hall, I think room 314.
Yes, exactly. Royce Hall 314, like you said, from 6 to 8, and open and free.
Yeah,
to
open
everyone.
to the public.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be Iranian. You don't have to be, a student, anything. It's really open to anyone who wants to come. And maybe you can tell Neda a little bit about what the night will be like. I mean, are there questions from the audience or is it just from the moderator?
Okay, yeah. So basically, we will start the panel off with every panelist giving maybe like a 10-minute talk about where they stand currently, maybe a few experiences they've had growing up, if they've experienced discrimination and how they what they did to overcome it, stuff like that. And then after that, there will be the actual panel, and this will consist of questions that ISG board has written and Dr. Nushin Valizadeh has added to and changed, and that will last for about 50 minutes. And then after that, for 15 to 30 minutes, seeing how many questions the audience has, there will be the floor will open up to the audience, and any questions that are asked will be discussed with the whole panel. So
Very good. That was good. Some of that was news to me too, so it's good for me to hear it. But yeah, that sounds. I like that it's going to be open to the audience, so that has that, because I think these types of events, you're bringing in some people who will share their experience and expertise, but then we want to make it a conversation and make people feel like they can be involved in the discourse as well. Now, I think we can talk a bit more about the event. We're at a commercial break, but if you guys are okay, we can talk a bit about being Iranian Americans on campus, what that experience is like. Also, for me, cultural identity is an important piece of our psychology, and seeing what people go through. Teenagers tend to, at some point, go away from their cultural heritage if they were born, especially like, let's say, in the United States, but then sometimes they come back to it. And college is a time where people are finding themselves as well. So maybe we can talk a bit about some of those elements for you guys, yourselves personally, but I think also ties into what the Iranian student group does. So after the break, I'll continue my conversation with Neda and Talla from the Iranian student group at UCLA. You're listening to In Session with Dr. Fadaee Holakouee. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Again, I'm joined now by Neda and Talla from the Iranian student group at UCLA, where next week, Thursday, November 21st, from 6 to 8 p.m., they are having a panel on peace. I'm very happy to be a part of that with some other very distinguished guests who will be joining, and it should be a great night of discussion, and you can even come with your questions or just come to listen. But if you are in the LA area, I hope to see you there. But since I have you here, I wanted to talk to you guys a bit about being yourselves, of course, but being on campus, what it's been like, even joining a group like the Iranian student group, if you had hesitations or you see people have hesitations, because cultural identity in general is a very multifaceted and complicated issue, but with culture, it can have its own, types of things that come along with that. So either one of you who wants to talk about either your own experience first, you're both pointing at each other, thing about who should go first, but either one of you could start. Neda, go ahead. Yeah.
So when I first started at UCLA, I thought it was really difficult to make friends. Since I transferred, it's just the education or the way classes are set up at a community college are so different that in class, whoever you're with, you become friends with them. But then I came to UCLA and there's just like no time to mingle with your classmates at all. And the only way to meet people is to join clubs. And so obviously I joined ISG because I love like the Iranian community and Iranian culture, and it's something I wanted to get closer to. Now though, basically my entire friend group is the Iranian student population, which is fine, but like for like a while I was like, I think it's kind of strange that like I'm only friends with Iranian people. Like maybe I should like try to expand my circle, which I am still trying to do, because I think it's good to be to not be so like exclusive, have like a wide group of friends. But it's just the Iranian student group is so like, their arms are always so open, they're so welcoming, and as you mentioned, it's like home away from home. And before the show we mentioned how when you're second generation Iranian American, you don't really feel American, you don't feel Iranian, and you're kind of confused like which group do I belong to? But whenever I'm with ISG, I feel like there's enough people that are recently came from Iran, and then people like myself who like are like the first people in their family to go to college and whatnot. And so I feel closer to my culture by being in ISG. So
Yeah. I think you there's so many things you said that maybe you want to comment on it, but it's because there's a lot in what you shared. But one is that it is this interesting balance of course, we feel comfortable with sometimes people maybe similar background, but you mentioned you also don't want to limit ourselves either. And so I think sometimes people, even with immigrants, sometimes they want to be around people like from their cultural background, but it makes it harder for them to then assimilate and acculturate to the country they're living in, and that has its own challenges. So I think it's good to find that balance of, okay, of course it can feel nice to have share some commonalities with people that you're spending time with, but we don't want to limit ourselves. And then the other part about being bicultural or being from, being an Iranian American. So you don't quite feel as Iranian as the very Persian people, let's say, or Iranian people, and you don't feel quite American with names like Neda or Talla or Farid. I felt that too. People couldn't even say my name. So you don't feel quite like you fit in either way. And there is this like middle ground or quote unquote no man's land you can feel in. And so it's nice to have like a group where it's like, oh, we're all, we are going through a similar thing. So again, I think it's not bad to have these groups. I think it's actually great, but we want to make sure it doesn't limit us either, where it's like that's our only group or that's all we are is like part of this group. But I think having the Iranian student group on campus is a great way for people to find people that they can connect with, and also to connect with their culture, which I think we talked about a bit before too, about how a lot of people, when they're kids, they might like their parents' culture. Then when they become teenagers, they kind of rebel or go against that. And then in college, sometimes they're trying to find themselves more, and that can involve a lot of things, including going back to their own cultural heritage and trying to understand that better. But Talla, I wanted to give you a chance to kind of talk about your own experience in that same realm.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Northern California in a relatively vibrant Iranian American community, but I ended up going to a Catholic high school. And so in high school, there were three, including myself, on campus, one of whom was my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
Her name is Manush. And we just we're lacking this larger network of Iranian Americans in where I grew up. And so I came to college kind of desiring or wanting that community and seeking it out. And I know a lot of students who end up joining ISG have similar ways of thinking. Like, they come up to us at the Enormous Activities Fair, like, I've been looking for you guys. I can't believe I found you guys. They're so excited that we are a community that exists for them. So for me, that transition to ISG was very natural, and my parents have commented on this. It's made me a lot more in touch with my culture, a lot more Persian. I listen to Persian music in my free time. My Farsi has improved. I can cook Persian food, and I think a lot of this is due to surrounding myself with people who are of the same culture, and that's what you said, is like that's the unique benefit of involving yourself in groups like this. But I do think that there is this stigma that comes with being in touch with your culture. You don't want to seem, and I no value judgments on my end, but I think in the minds of some people, you don't want to seem like a fob, or you don't want to seem too into Iranian culture, because at the end of the day, like, you're an American.
Let me explain fob for people who are not familiar.
Yeah, sure.
That's fresh off the boat. It's kind of, it almost can be used pejoratively, and sometimes
Definitely.
it is, but basically it's saying someone who only recently has come, let's say, to the United States, so they're just off the boat, even though most people are coming via plane. But people
Right.
can have that feeling of they don't want to look too quote unquote cultural or almost like ethnic in their, whatever their background is, because it means they're different from the mainstream. And so, it does create this challenge. But go ahead.
And I think, in fact, to draw on that, for the Iranian American community, for a lot of communities that identify as like marginalized or a bit in the minority, this is also like a coping mechanism, kind of a sense of security. Like, when our parents came here, they lived through like the hostage crisis. You didn't want to be known as an Iranian back then, because there was so much anti-Iran sentiment. And so slowly we've seen this drift away from our culture. And the goal of ISG, or at least what we hope to accomplish, the reason I get involved is I want to make being Iranian cool. I want people to come to our booth a little uncertain. I've had people say, like, well, I don't even speak Farsi. I don't know if I should do this. And it's like, no, a lot of us don't speak Farsi, and that's not a measure of how Iranian you are. It's just the fact that you are Iranian that makes you enough to be in ISG. And we hope that perhaps by your involvement in this club, you get even more in touch with your culture. So I think that's the function of ISG on campus, and that's why I think it's so important to get people involved.
Yeah, it is so complex, because I think people, like you said, there's a wanting to connect with it, but then, like you mentioned, it could be uncool in certain ways to be too, let's say, Persian, because people have some associations with that, or it might make them feel like they'll be left out. So it almost feels like you have to pick sides, but hopefully it won't have to be. And I think most people are very complex. Like me, myself, I think there's a lot of Iranian in me, but also very American, and also other cultures as well. So maybe it's not such a dichotomy either. And I see that progression in myself, where I was younger, very much like the Persian stuff. Because when you're a kid, your parents are your everything. They're kind of like your gods. So you're connected to them. Then when you get into the teenage years, your peers become more that, who you define yourself by, or who you want to be like. And this is something I do with so many parents, and they have a challenge with this. They're like, when he was a kid, he was so wanting to hang out with us, and now he says, like, drop us off 3 blocks away from like their friend's house, or don't do this, and they don't want to spend time with us. And it can be very challenging, but that's a natural part of our psychological development, is to then get closer to our peers, and they become kind of like the role models and how we measure ourselves. And in college, it's still part of maybe that later adolescence phase, but I think people become much more open to exploring different aspects of their identity, and I think you guys are in the midst of that. And it seems for both of you, or Talla especially, you were saying being part of the Iranian student group has gotten you much more in touch with your Iranian side, almost to the surprise of your parents. Like they didn't
Right.
see that side in you. Do you remember ever going away, or was there a feeling of, okay, being less Iranian will make it easier for me to not blend in, but especially, fit in at your school in high school?
I didn't really feel that. In all honesty, I
Mhm.
just think that because there are no structures there to reinforce, especially in high school, this Iranian American identity, it just naturally wasn't something that I drifted towards.
Mhm.
I always felt a sense of pride in having like a unique culture with such a rich history, with such great food. I do think though, when I draw back even further past high school, back to elementary school, I would bring kebab kubida to school sometimes. My parents are really big on the home cooking, so I would never get school lunch. I would always have some sort of Iranian food, and our food tastes great, but sometimes the presentation is not the prettiest. And
Yeah.
so I would
Well,
bring
and the smell of
Oh,
kubida, I mean, that's
smell.
not,
That's
yeah,
true.
not,
That's true.
yeah, yeah. Thankfully, it's a radio show. You can't, like, it's not a, there's no smell involved. But that's always the thing. I remember it's like a classic immigrant child experience. It's like opening your lunch and and then everyone's spelling it, like, what is, like, not,
Right.
it's not the smells they're used to. Yeah. But so
Right.
you had that experience.
Exactly. Yeah. I'd have people even say to me like, "Your food looks like poop," and it would insult me. It's like my dad made this
Yeah.
for me. I mean, then I would feel embarrassed and not want to bring it. I'm like, I should have the nachos on campus instead.
Right.
Nowadays, there's no way I would choose nachos over kubida, but
Uh-huh,
back
right.
then it was just that was what pushed me in that direction.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the stuff that, immigrant children or children of immigrants deal with, these types of things where they're different in certain ways. And sometimes you don't think of these things, but even the food you eat can make
Yeah.
you seem like an outsider, or seem like, so different. So Neda, for you too, have you felt that being part of the Iranian student group got you closer, or was it always a big part of your life being Iranian?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Uh-huh.
So I've always, unlike you, I never like tried to distance myself. Maybe with the food, I brought like turkey sandwiches instead of like korma sabzi or something. But I always tried to stay like in touch with my culture. So in high school, I was part of the Persian club. But now I'm making more of like an proactive choice to get more involved. So, for example, I'm taking the Persian language classes because I never knew how to write.
And your professor is a longtime family friend of ours,
Yeah.
Khanum Haqiqi.
Yeah, Khanum Haqiqi actually also helped a lot with planning the panel. Thought I'd give her a little
Oh,
shout
really?
out.
Okay,
Yeah,
very
she
nice.
did a lot for us.
And
so.
I don't know if I'm going to get you in trouble. I think you're currently supposed to be in her class
Oh,
at
yes.
this moment.
Yes.
So this is your doctor's note, that you're allowed to miss class today.
I think she'll understand.
Yeah, hopefully she'll understand. But yes, but you were taking Farsi language,
Yeah,
or Persian
exactly.
language. I know that's also big.
Yeah.
People say Farsi a lot, but really the more appropriate term, I think, is Persian for the language. Yeah.
Yeah, and so part of that is because I'd go on Instagram and my family would message me and comment in Farsi and Persian, and I couldn't read it. And so I'd send a screenshot to my mom, or I'd just like maybe like put a little heart emoji and just feel like they're complimenting me. That's and wishing me the best. But now I can read it and it's really exciting, and I feel like I'm closer to my family in Iran. So it's a good thing that's come out of trying to get closer to my culture. And
Yeah. Yeah, and this is you guys have similar, maybe, but different, of course, in their own ways, your experiences. But I talked to a lot of Persian parents, like, because there's very often this feeling of, how do I get my kids to be more Persian, or to speak the language more, to this or that. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that when we talk about culture, of course, you guys both talked about the food, which is a big part of culture, but also culture reflects morality and living a good life and a bad life. And I was talking about men and women in the first segment, but it's also about what is a man supposed to do and not supposed to do, and what is all those things about what is good, bad, right, and wrong. And so parents can have this fear of their children going down the wrong path. And so you hear this a lot of Persian parents or all immigrant parents saying, oh, my kids are going to become like the American kids, in this very negative way, that it's the wrong way of living. And of course, this feeling that they're losing their connection to them. So if we're both, if I'm Iranian and that's such a big part of me, and now my kids don't want to be that Iranian, that means they're going away from me. So I think for parents, this can be very difficult to face that. Talla, I feel like you wanted to add
Yeah,
on
really
that.
quickly. And then their kids kids at the same time. If
Right.
your kids aren't going to be Iranian, their kids probably won't be as Iranian. And it's not even this idea that we must marry Iranians, but it's more so like even if you are marrying a non-Iranian, your Iranian identity needs to be strong enough to influence both your partner and your kids in the hopes of passing on this tradition,
Yeah.
this beautiful culture, and not losing it.
Right, and that's the topic for a whole other show about marrying inside or outside of the Iranian community. But in this last couple of minutes, we can come back to the event again. I'm very excited to get to be a part of this event at UCLA, which I went there myself, and I was telling you guys, very great years there. I loved the experience. But I'm so happy you guys are planning this type of an event, and I hope there'll be more of these in the future. And I'll kind of put it out there now on the air that I would love to be a part of them if there are some more in the future. Based on how I do next week, though, you guys can make that decision. But it really, I think, is great to talk about peace, talk about unity within our community, because I think you guys are right. You guys were talking about it in the last segment about how there is unfortunately a lot of disunity or even a lot of prejudice, both within the Iranian community and also with outside. I see it very often with people I talk to, work with, that it's almost embedded in a lot of our ways of talking, that it's almost good or okay to be racist or even sexist, actually, but to promote some of those stereotypes. And I think we would hope that as Iranians, first, we can be very unified within ourselves, but then be a source of bringing about more unity and peace and not contributing to those unfortunate negative social factors in the world. So that was kind of some of my own thoughts. I don't know if you guys have any closing remarks about the event that people should know about or that you wanted to share before we go to another commercial break.
Just want to stress this is the first time we've ever done
Yeah.
anything of this nature. I want to also add that the event is explicitly apolitical in that we won't be coming at it. I know identity is in some instances inherently political, but for the purpose of not isolating anyone in the community, we want people to bring their own lived experiences, share, and learn from each other in that way. So
Yeah. Neda, any closing remarks
No, I
on
think
there?
Talla said everything
Yeah, that
perfectly.
sounded great. So, but thank you, both of you, Neda Fadaee and Talla Khelghati from the Iranian student group at UCLA, for joining me on the show today. And again, the event is next Thursday, November 21st, from 6 to 8 p.m. at Royce Hall on the UCLA campus. If you've never been to UCLA, don't worry, just get there probably early, at 6 p.m., because parking and walking around could take a little bit of time. But then if you ask people, there's so many people that can help you find Royce Hall. So don't be intimidated by trying to find the place. Just get there early. And if you do come, please come say hello to me. But again, Neda and Talla, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
thank you for having us. Excited to have you on the panel.
Yes, thank you. I'm looking forward to it. And so I'll be on after the break, taking calls and talking with you, but they'll be leaving now, but I appreciate them for coming in. You're listening to In Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Studio number 310-441-0555. Let's go to a caller. Radio Hamra, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hello. Hi. Thanks for calling.
How are you, Dr.
I'm
Holakouee?
doing well. Thank you. How are you?
Okay. You've been talking about the Iranian students coming to America and also about the equality of men and women in your talks. And
Yeah.
I wanted to give some input about them. When I came to America, it was 1969. Yes, I'm a very oldie person, but dollar was only $7 to $1. And now the students are coming with 15,000 to $1 from Iran. And that makes a lot of difference.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. But then when we came here, nobody knew Iranians. I was the only Iranian in my campus when I went to Earlham College in Richmond, Indiana. But then when I went to Purdue University, there were more students there. And at that time, they didn't even know what yogurt, We introduced yogurt to them.
So it's definitely a
Just
different
like in
time.
the cafeteria.
But you're right. There's also, you talked before about the financial, but other things too. People knowing about Iranians and what they know and different things definitely change from, different times. And so the Iranian students now, or immigrant students now, of course, will face different challenges to Iranian
And
students in
then,
different times.
There was no internet, and they just said, what model of camel your father is driving, and they saw thought we just go around with camels, you know.
Well, I'm sure sometimes they genuinely thought that. Sometimes I know that's also used as kind of like a racial slur or insult to say things like that. But yeah, and in general, explicit racism has become less. Now you still see it, but fortunately less than before. But I'm sure back then it was much more of that explicit racism of people saying certain things. Actually, I asked Neda and Talla about any prejudice they maybe have experienced on campus or discrimination, and they both said nothing really explicit that they had experienced. So thankfully, we do see less of that. Yeah.
Well, of course, at that time, we did not have hostage taking. They did not think of Iranians as terrorists or things like that. We didn't have those stuff yet, you know. It was during the Shah. It was during the time that, you know, our passport was valid. About men and women equality, I'd like to say something because it makes me angry about it.
Sure.
Is that I don't think we should ask for equality. We are above men. Women are, and ask me why. Is that I can do whatever a man does, even heavy stuff. Some women do heavy, lift heavy stuff. But what I do, men cannot do. They cannot give birth. They cannot breastfeed. They cannot have periods. They cannot. So none of those things that we can do and you can't is not, I'm not you, Mr.
No.
Farid, I'm talking men.
I understand.
It's not at all written in the law that when you hire a woman, it's not just the salary we're asking for equality. We need a day off during the month. We need 3 months paid for pregnancy, a year for breastfeeding. These things is what we're after, and then we call it equality.
Sure. I think, you know, actually in some of this book, of course, was called Inferior, the one I was talking about by Angela Saini in the first segment. It was looking at how science, unfortunately, has made this almost general statement that women were inferior to men, and now there's science that's challenging that or even showing that the original science wasn't really...
It's not science.
Science,
it's
yeah.
And Quran and Torah and all these religions that...
Yeah, but these were, but the problem was, was that these were scientists, but they were, as all scientists do, bringing their own beliefs into what they were finding and their interpretations. And unfortunately, as I mentioned, that was further perpetuating these stereotypes and this way of thinking. But what you were saying...
Can I ask you something? Like, isn't that one sperm and one...
egg, yeah, egg?
Egg would be creating and your DNA, one sperm. So it has one sperm that tells you who's the father.
Right.
So it's just, DNA really blew all these religious things that put women down, and, we were created from the rib of man. Forget it. We're created, of course, this in Quran doesn't say it, but Torah says it. So we are created from the same egg, divided to 2, divided to 4. You see what I mean?
No, but that's the part where I think, there's something to be said about you're saying the superiority of women. And even in the book, there's some people, she talks about some writers who've mentioned that women can be superior, especially for the future in some ways. But I think we have to be aware what I heard you saying is one of the issues that people can have with feminism. So to me, feminism means about bringing about equality. And as you said, equality doesn't just mean if the paychecks are the same, that's the end. There's so many different ways that it's embedded into culture and society that we have to look at. But sometimes what people can be turned off by feminism or don't even join in the fight for equality is that they think that feminism means hating men or being anti-men.
We love them.
Okay.
We adore them.
But what you expressed,
we want our own rights.
I'm sure, absolutely. That's what I'm saying.
When I'm hired, I have to know that I have paid pregnancy. I cannot be in a meeting when I'm breastfeeding. I was in a meeting, and my breast started giving milk because at that time you give milk. They should have told me go home, stay 3 months or 4 months. Japan has it.
Sure. I'm not disagreeing with you. I think actually, and it's not just for women that we do this, it's for all of society, as whatever portion of the society we hold down in any way or are not meeting their needs, all of society is going to pay the price. And of course, they pay it the most, but it's bad for everyone. And so I'm agreeing with you. But what I felt in what you were saying at the beginning was an anger towards men. And so,
No. It's not.
okay.
It's anger towards society,
Sure.
towards religious people, towards misinterpretation
Yeah.
of women's physique. We don't have to prove that we are like men. I'm not a man. I'm a woman, but I
Right.
could have equal rights.
Well, that's the thing is
I'm
that
not saying that. Your father thinks that if I. Sorry. Okay. I'm not.
Well,
gonna
yeah,
say
let's
that.
not go. I mean,
Anyway,
because I'll talk to you about whatever I think I can
thank
talk
you
about.
for the time, and please tell Neda and the young people to don't ask for equality, ask for justice, for the sameness. Your physics should be included in it. That's all I'm saying.
Which I agree with, but I think even what you're saying, not. But you don't want sameness if you're saying that women might need particular things that a man wouldn't, and that should be valued equally. That if a man needed it, would be provided. So I think we have to be aware. There are some. I think the differences have been very much exaggerated, and that's what this book was talking about. These differences between men and women and their brains and their bodies. Of course, there are some, but they've been very much exaggerated, and I think that's not good. And we should recognize that we're much more similar than different, and that. But
Yeah,
even
if I was just like you, I couldn't give birth either.
Sure.
So something is different.
of course, absolutely.
That doesn't mean I'm inferior. I'm superior.
That's-
I mean, I'm fighting for superior, so I get equality. You know what I mean?
But that's
It's like
the part.
You fight for B, so you get a C.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I get what you're saying you want to go for superiority, hopefully get to equality.
Yeah.
But like I said, I want you to think about what it creates in people if they hear you coming with that notion of trying to make superiority. It could then make a lot of men feel threatened by it. Now, men sometimes might be threatened even by equality, which we see that a lot where the groups in power don't like equality because they feel like it's becoming unfair, even though it's becoming more balanced, but they feel like they're losing something. But a lot of people can be turned off when they see feminism as somehow anti-male or trying to make women be superior to men and put men down. It could make people less likely. So I know you say you're going for the B to get the C, but sometimes if you're shooting that high, people won't even join your fight to help you. And that's something I've noticed is recognizing
they
that.
put us down for a good while, and everybody was with them.
Absolutely,
Put them down for a
and
while.
that's the experience. I think it's very understandable. What any group that gets persecuted or treated as less than is going to understandably have a lot of anger and resentment towards the other group. Absolutely, that makes sense, and that's why I think it's also so important for the group that has been doing the oppressing or has been having the privileges to recognize that and to acknowledge that and even in some way apologize to make amends. And this is why even I believe in the United States when it comes to African Americans, because of slavery, there has to be a very clear acknowledgement and apology for what has happened to try to repair the past. It doesn't take away the past, but can help us move forward so that there isn't that underlying anger and resentment which is built up because of the years of oppression. So with men and women, there is a similar theme where the women have been mistreated. So of course there's going to be anger, and now it's like, okay, well now if we're going to get some power, we're going to put you down the way you put us down, which is an understandable reaction, but I think at times it will lead to less progress overall. But again, it's easier
like
said than done.
The pendulum has to go the
Yeah.
other way, all the way up, until it comes back to the middle.
It's at
And now
times,
it's at the other side. We want it to go the other way,
yeah.
all the way up, and then come back to the middle.
No, yeah.
Maybe that way we get something, because ignorance is winning. It's ignorance against blacks, ignorance against Jews, ignorance against women. So all of these things comes roots in ignorance and religious figures.
Well, I think, and you mentioned this something before about equality. I think that's the thing, is we can recognize even, of course, every human being is unique. So we have differences, but that recognizing that the value of every human has to be equal. And that's what we're going towards. It doesn't matter how you're different.
Right.
The value of each human being, men, women, gay, straight, race, whatever it is, has to be valued equally. And we're still not there.
Muslims or no God people, what do you say?
Atheists, yeah, whoever it is, their value is important. So I think that's what we're moving
Exactly.
towards. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you, Dr.
Sure.
Talla.
Thanks for calling.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So Those some important topics that were brought up that I think when we look at the fight for progress, as she mentioned, sometimes the pendulum swings from one end to the other. There's reactions that happen, and she said that might be what needs to take place. Is it have to happen? I'm not going to say it does have to happen or definitely doesn't. But as I mentioned, for me, it's so important to recognize what's happening. So even for me as a man, recognizing that the benefits and privileges I get being a man, I don't have to necessarily feel bad about them or ashamed about them, but acknowledging them is important. And especially when oppression has taken place. And for me, this is very clear in the United States when we look at slavery and what happened after slavery. And even still, we see that there's systematic discrimination and racism in the United States, that if there isn't a very clear acknowledgement and a desire to make amends for it, we're going to continue to face the pains of slavery. So a lot of people say, well, why do we have to still talk about slavery? It happened, it ended like legally 50 years ago in the United States. Why is that still an issue? But is that we haven't really made amends for what's happened, and it's still causing damage. So to me, until we make amends, until there's acknowledgement, we're always going to face that pain of what's happened. So we can't go away from it because the scar hasn't healed. So you can get injured, and it's not that you keep thinking about that event, but if the scar hasn't healed, it's hard for you to move forward and not continue to feel that pain. And that scar won't get healed until there is acknowledgement. When we get hurt by someone, when we're angry with them, healing takes time. But one of the things that can accelerate that healing is when it's acknowledged and an apology is sincerely made. And one of the things that can greatly interfere with that is when it's not acknowledged, denied, and minimized. That makes the person feel hurt. I use this example a lot because maybe when I drive, I can feel a little bit maybe subtle road rage at times or get angry. But when someone cuts you off and you're driving, if they acknowledge it by putting up their hand and saying sorry, you tend to feel a lot better than if they don't. Just that acknowledgement and subtle apology can make you go from being angry to calming down. And so similarly, that's of course a very, very small type of transgression. But when we're talking about even bigger pictures, even more, there's a healing power of acknowledgement and apology that needs to take place. And so yes, with men and women, the same thing does have to happen. That I think it's important for men to recognize the privileges they have gotten and the ones they still get, and the ways that men throughout history have put women down in various ways and continue to do so. I do think it would be helpful that for the feminist movements, if you want to call it that, to recognize that if they come with too much anger towards men and putting them down, it can interfere with the progress. That's my opinion, rather than promoting it, and that can have its own effects. But thank you to that caller for sharing her thoughts. We'll go into another commercial break. Studio number 310-441-0555. You're listening to In Session with Dr. Fadaee Talla. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Let's go to another caller. Radio Hamra, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hi, thanks for calling.
Hi, Dr. It was a pleasure to talk with you.
My pleasure, too.
Recently, I broke up with my girlfriend after 4 years relationship. And unfortunately, in the past 2 months of the relationship, she started seeing other people on my back. And I understood about these things, and she came to me and she said, I don't have any feeling to you, and she somehow left me. On that time, to be honest, I was very upset, but this very bad incident happened for me. It was about like a couple of weeks ago, which I saw her in a party with the other guys in a very bad shape, like they like kissing each other or have a bad touching with each other and so on. And after that incident, to be honest, I had a very, very bad feeling. I couldn't go back to the work. I got a very bad depression. I lost my appetite. I was very regretful what happened, why we broke up. And so many other things. And I started Googling about these things, and I understood heartbroken syndrome or something like this. I don't know about that. And there is something, it's like a disease which exists in the psychology. And I believe such a thing happened on me. And to be honest, I called you to get help from you or get your idea about that and see how I can help myself. I already went to the psychiatric. I started seeing psychologists. They prescribed me like antidepressant or Xanax and so on. I couldn't sleep sometimes at the night. I'm very under stress. I don't know, because I saw that scene, which is like a trauma. It happened on me, or I don't know, to be honest,
Yeah.
what happened on me.
Well, so I mean, of course, it sounds like what you went through was very painful, and I want to get some more of the details so I'm clear on that. Now, heartbreak syndrome. I mean, it's definitely not an official diagnosis. I don't know. I mean, it just sounds like the pain from a breakup, which happens, and it can be very devastating and very hurtful. And it's interesting because for some people, having a label on something they're going through can make them feel bad, like they're getting judged. For some people, it makes them feel like, oh, okay, there's a name and other people go through what I'm going through. It can feel better. But what's even more important for me is for us to get a little bit deeper to understand what happened and what's going on and what you're feeling, because that can help in the healing process, understanding what you are experiencing. So just so I'm clear, you guys, you dated for 4 years and then you broke up. Did you say, how long ago did you break up?
It was 2 months ago.
Okay, you broke up 2 months ago, but you said for the last few months of the relationship, you found out she was dating other people?
Yes. To be honest, in the past 3 or 4 months of the relationship, we had some issues with each other. We couldn't talk with each other. We have some issues. I tried to work out on these things, and I was hoping by the time goes by, things get better. But I've seen many lies from her on the weekend. She went out, for example, to her friend, but she ended up in another place. She started dating like 2 more guys. And in the last step, she came back to me and tell the truth, said, hey, I saw 2 other people. There's nothing happened between us, but from now on, I want to stop relationship with you. I want to go see the 2 other guys and so on. Hey, listen, I'm very honest with you because I'm telling you at this point. By the way, I told her, hey, listen, when you said the truth, it doesn't mean you did a good job.
Yeah.
I know, I appreciate you tell me the truth, but it's not a good job. I had a feeling for you. I was waiting for you. I have, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
I was
you're
very
right. Of course you were
very
upset. And what was going on in the relation? I mean, yeah, that's the way you're describing it sounds a little bit off, that, like, yeah, you're right, for her to come and say almost like she's doing you a favor by telling you the truth. Yes, that part's better than lying, but what she was doing, what she was telling you the truth about was hurtful. So what was going on in the relationship? I mean, 4 years is a long time. And also, how old are you and how old is she, so I get an idea of like where you guys are in your lives and what's going on?
Yeah, I'm 36 and she was 38.
Okay. And were you guys
And
thinking of, have either of you been married before?
me, no, she, yes.
Okay. And were you guys talking about looking for marriage, having a family, those kinds of things?
To be honest, once she had a little conversation about the marriage, and at that point, to be honest, I somehow a little reject that. But I asked her to be a little patient for that thing and the time, and she agreed on that. But the main concern I guess she had on me was about my family, my lifestyle, and you are working too much. I love to have a fun, and even in the past months of the relationship, she said, "Hey, listen, I had one marriage before. I don't want to have any marriage anymore. I just want to have spend time or something like this. You know what I mean?"
So what did you want, though? Did you want marriage or you did not want marriage?
On that time, she told me I didn't want that. But at the end, when I saw she was about to leave and she was very, strong, so I told her, hey, listen, I would agree with your criteria. But she told me, hey, I lost my feeling. I don't have that feeling anymore.
So it seems like you were less wanting to get married, but more not wanting to lose her.
Yes.
Okay.
That's true. I just want to keep her in the relationship. But I was agreed to marry her,
Yeah, but
for
agree to marry her sounds like you're getting pressured into it. Not I want to marry her, but I'm still the relationship seems a little bit off for me because you were together for 4 years, but the way you describe it has like a casual feeling to it, which is a little confusing for me. That's why I was asking what you guys were looking for, because 4 years is a long time.
Yes,
Um,
and Doctor,
yeah.
let me tell you something else. She had one child from her previous marriage, okay? And I had a good, maybe, contact with her child. They were very good. But I always had a feeling her child was a boy. And when I saw her boy, I said, hey, listen, maybe our marriage can cause some damage to your child. And even my family, since you have a baby, it's going to be very hard. I explain this situation to them, and it's going to be like a fight. I can do that, but it's going to be I have to go to the fight with my family. So let's just live together, casual living together like others, and we're going to be happy and so on. You know what I mean?
I mean, I kind of know what you mean, but it's still, I think the setup wasn't a great setup to begin with. But how old is her child?
9,
9 years.
actually 10.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, again, the what you guys were doing seems unclear as to what you both wanted. Did you guys want the same thing? Your family. So did you hide the relationship from your family, or your family just was not okay with marriage?
I hide the relationship from family.
Okay. See, that is also a problem.
Yeah.
For have a 4 year relation, and you were living together.
No, we never lived together, but we like 3 days a week we were together.
Yeah.
While the child was not with her, we were together.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, it seems like there's some things. If you're asking me about the setup that you have to look at, because the relationship started, you were about 32, and I'm not sure what you're looking for. You don't have to get married, but what you were looking for, and then having a relationship that you're hiding from your family for 4 years, she might have been upset about that also. She might have felt
Yeah.
like you were not accepting her, or accepting her basically by not accepting her and the kid and telling your family. So I don't know, was that also an issue in the relationship?
Yeah, she was upset. She was upset about my family mindset. My family mindset was about like business, working hard, you know, have a plan in life. But she was like, hey, let's do casual. Let's just live for now. Spend the time, like let's just have a good time. When I talk about like saving and so on, she was not that much happy about saving, and you know what I mean. She was just live in present. This is the concept we have, differences. By the way, to be honest, I like to marry her. I love her on that time. I don't mind. But because of the child and the family issues, it was like obstacle for us, to move forward. And that's why I suggest her to just be together without marriage. And for a life, after like 9, 10 years, maybe we can marry or so on. But the point is, she agreed with me at first. Okay, but when the time passed, I guess when she saw then you know what, she got married with a very when she was like 20 years old. She was with a very long-term marriage. After divorce, she just got to know me. She doesn't have that much experience to me with outside society or dating other people, and I have a feeling she thought maybe other good people, other suitable people, maybe sitting outside waiting for her. You know what I mean? And that's the things I believe it has happened, and maybe even in the future after she got a problem, they may want to get back to the relationship. I don't know, but to be honest, the scene I saw, it was very traumatic.
Yeah.
I have never seen her with other guys for a long time. I've never thought she's gonna date other people while I was on that relationship or so on. And to be honest, I couldn't do anything. I lost weight. I was all my body is like hot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't know how I can help myself. How I can maybe I understand. So many people told me maybe this relationship is ended. You should accept the fact. You shouldn't continue these things. So many things are broken, and so on. But I'm suffering about this happens. I even regret for example, those time she maybe proposed me. I should accept that immediately, I blame myself for something like this, and
Yeah, well,
I don't know.
there's a lot you're obviously dealing with, and the way it ended was very hard. Of course, that she was dating other people. That sounds really bad, of course. And then that you saw her at a party not that much after you guys broke up, and being very, I guess, touchy with some other guy must have been very painful and a little bit odd, like that she was moving on that quickly. There seems to be that's I just the way you describe the relationship, I don't get a very strong connection with you and her. It just seems like you guys were together. I'm sure 4 years there was some closeness and love, but it just feels like a very disconnected thing. So she just was already dating other people, and then she was with someone else. And so I don't know how much you were ready to invest into this relationship, how much you wanted to really be in it. And then now that you lost her, you want her back. But I don't know if really you wanted her. And so something you have to think about for yourself, there's still the healing. I can understand you're hurt from this, but of what got you in this situation that you stayed with 4 years for someone where it really couldn't become totally serious, and had to stay in this casual place. What do you really want? I don't know if you really want to be with someone and very close with someone. And so, and you chose someone that she seems to be very flighty, like kind of all over the place. Like, don't save money, don't, everything is about just now in the moment. And of course, being present is good, but this doesn't sound like being present. It almost sounds like there's a pressure to do things in a way that doesn't seem very stable. So it's just a little strange to me when I hear you talk about the relationship. But of course, your pain, I can completely understand. Of course, that she was dating other people, and then it ended that way. And then within 2 months, you had to see her. That visual, of course, is going to be very hurtful, because in your mind, you were still probably feeling for her. So it was almost like seeing someone cheating on you, even though it technically definitely was not, or it wasn't cheating, but it probably felt that way, like you said, a trauma. So there's a lot of things for you to obviously be dealing with, but I would also want you to look at what was going on in this relationship. What did you get yourself into, and why?
To be honest, by the time we got each other, to be honest, we both of us didn't have a good situation. She was like a student, I was looking for a job, and we somehow, our life path, get together because we both want to be with someone.
Yeah.
We want to fill our time. But we did very good. Both of us, after these 4 years, we were both in a very good situation.
What do you mean? In life? Yeah, but see, even... Right.
Both of us, financially and, mentally, I believe, maybe.
No, I know, but see, the way you talk about it as if like the relationship served a purpose. Like, okay, we were both lonely, so it was good to have someone. And then by the end of the relationship, I had, financially, I was in a better place mentally, but it doesn't seem like the relationship was the priority. I don't get this really sense of you and her being so close and connected. It just seems like, even in a way we're acknowledging it, it was just convenient. You both needed someone. You were both kind of in a not a good place, and it was your lives, the paths crossed. But when your paths just cross, they kind of uncross over time too, where it's like there's not much there other than just the convenience of it. And so maybe for her, as you're saying, there was a convenience. She was alone. She wanted to be with someone, but because she wasn't that connected to you, she then wanted to be with other people. Now, maybe that was just more on her end, but I don't get this sense of a really strong connection between you and her.
Okay. To be honest, we have a very good conversation with each other for everything. For many like hobbies, things, we are in the same page. And I believe when we talk with each other, I don't know, we help each other. You know what I mean? And to be honest, as you said, when I lost her, now I understood how much I needed her. You know what I mean? And
yeah, but that itself is telling. I mean, I'm sure it was very painful, but it's like it was hard for you to acknowledge her when you had her. And we're basically at a commercial break, but I do want us to continue the conversation, and we want to look a little bit also at your own past and history to see what has gotten you here, because like I said, I feel from you like you don't want to really have someone 100%, but you don't want to be alone either. And so that's maybe what helped create this situation with her. Now, the way she was at the end of the relationship, of course, was very hurtful, but it's going to be important for you to try to understand it better too, first to heal from what's happening now. I agree with some of what you said your friends are saying, that it doesn't seem like there's a lot of hope here for this relationship based on what's happened. But so for you to learn from that, and then so what you want in the future is more clear, and you don't get yourself in a similar situation. So I'm going to go ahead and put you on hold, and we'll talk after the break, okay?
Thank you.
Sure. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Before the break, we're with the caller. Let's go back to him now. Caller, are you still there?
Hello.
Yes. Hi. Okay. So before the break, you were sharing about what you've gone through recently, a breakup that happened about 2 months ago, and you're feeling a lot of heartbreak and heartache from what happened and how things ended. And you said it's really been affecting you. And there's a lot of different layers to this, of course. But you've mentioned how much you've been hurt now. But I was saying I also want you to think about what happened and how did you get here. So even during the break, did you think at all about what you think made you get to this point, why you chose this type of relationship? Or do you even see what I'm saying where I say the connection wasn't exactly what I would expect from a 4-year relationship?
Yes, doctor. Actually, I was thinking we had a very good companionship with each other.
Mm-hmm.
We had a very good high quality intimacy with each other. And when I was with her, I was really in a very in my comfort zone, and I was very happy when I was with her, when I was watching a movie together or something like this. And these are the things which help us to last this relationship for 4 years. And these are the very positive things I can say about her. She was very smart. She was pretty, very good, in a very good shape, and all these things I just helped. I went through this relationship.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know
Okay.
what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm sure there was things you liked about her. I don't want to say there was nothing there. I just the sense I got from how you talked about it was in 4 years, that feeling, and even the way she ended things was very much like there was no, at least from her end, it could have just been she decided, but like this disconnection that, I went on dates with other men, but nothing happened, and now I want to date other men. It just seems like I'm not sure exactly what was going on with her, but there wasn't this feeling of commitment at all. Or maybe she was very, very unhappy and didn't express it to you, and then acted in this way, which I don't agree with at all. I always think you should end whatever you're in first, but it just seems like something strange about the way things ended,
Yeah. To be honest, we went to the psychologist before, and psychologists evaluate both of us, and the psychologist already warned me about a little bit borderline symptoms
Yeah.
she had.
Mm-hmm.
She had actually, and also she told me she is like a boy. You know what I mean? She can move on from a relationship very fast, and she's not that much like romantic or how to say emotional person. I can say it might be a character first of all, and second, as I said, she doesn't have that much experience dating, other people because of, marriage or my relationship. And these are the factors I believe caused her strange behavior on me. You know what I mean?
Possibly, yeah. There was, that I obviously don't want to diagnose her, and even when you say borderline tendencies or something, that's not really a diagnosis, but that was the feeling I got, something so unstable about the way you at least are describing her. And now I know you said she's like a boy, but I think men are very capable and should be emotionally connected to their partners. But I get the point that she was making, and that's something that I think it does make sense in what you're saying, that after a 4-year relationship, she was, all of a sudden was dating 2 other people, and came back to you very matter-of-factly, like it's not that big of a deal. And then 2 months later, you see her at a party, and the way you were describing the behavior was very touchy and over,
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's something a little bit off there, yeah.
Yeah, let me explain something more. And the guy she met, I know she's like a guy which is financially or much better than me, and maybe even his appearance is a little bit better than me. And she has, I don't want to mention his job actually, but he's much better than me. You know what I mean?
Well, see, let me stop you there. that's what I wanted to bring up too in this before we finish today is that usually what you experience. First of all, her just saying it probably brought this up, but even more seeing it, this feeling of competition or feeling not good enough compared to these other men, I'm sure got triggered for you, and that's part of what you're experiencing. Isn't just the heartbreak of losing her. I think it's part of that pain of how it's making you feel about yourself.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe because yeah, that's true. But by the way, I don't know. Most people told me you need time. It's a matter of time you
Sure.
feel this problem. And I got a very bad depression. And to be honest, I have a very regret feeling for the years or days past. And
What do you mean by the
even,
regret for? Now you've mentioned before regret that why didn't I say yes to her
yeah,
proposal?
why
Is
didn't
that
I,
what you mean? Okay.
why didn't I appreciate those times? She was too much in love with me. I couldn't treat her better, maybe to start her in a relationship. Maybe
How?
I could
By the way,
have
how?
that. Yeah,
When was that she mentioned the marriage?
in the third year.
Oh, third year. Okay, so it wasn't like quick. But the way you're describing her, you maybe felt something also that she was all like a little bit too much in some ways, like all over the place, the way you described it. And so maybe on one hand you liked that because the way you're describing her, a woman like that, or it could be a man, but a woman like that can make you feel very good because they show attention in a certain way that's very intense, that can feel good. But then you didn't really feel like something was really there, and maybe you were kind of right because how quickly she moved on from you is a sign of that. And so I know you're feeling pain, but as I said before, to me, the pain is not just because she's so good for you and your relationship was so good. It's that, of course, it's painful for a 4-year relationship to end and for it to end in this way with basically some type of infidelity, but also her so quickly moving on and you seeing it. But for me, your pain is more about learning about why you were in this type of relationship, choosing this type of woman in the relationship, and then also the way you think about yourself, that when you saw her with this other man, it brought up all these feelings of you not being good enough. And those are some of the pains you're facing. So to me, she's not your solution being with her, but she's bringing up a lot of your problems within yourself that in a way can be good to help you grow and heal. And you mentioned time does heal, but it also depends what we do with that time. If someone breaks their leg, but the next day they try to walk on it, no matter how long they wait, that bone will never heal. So what we do is important. I'm happy you went to see a therapist and a psychiatrist. That's going to be part of the healing process. But what you do with the time will determine if time will heal or if it won't heal what you're going through.
Yeah. And let me ask a question.
Sure.
Do you think seeing other people or dating other people, why, I still think about her wherever I go, I see her, memories, pop up on my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think seeing other people is a solution, or I need time to get healed and then maybe I get back to the.
Yeah, well, it depends on what you mean by solution. And the reason why I say that is because, drug will also be a solution. Like it'll make you feel good. If you have some drugs right now, it'll cheer you up for at least a moment. And if you date other people, it might give you a slight distraction. Although what you'll probably experience the way you're describing it is you'll be thinking about her so much and comparing them to her so much that you won't get that much out of it. And it will be a little bit unfair to the person you're going on the date with also. And a lot of people will give you that solution because for most people, what they see as your problem or what they don't like about your situation is that you're sad. And they say, okay, you're sad. How do we take away your sad feeling? Okay, go be with someone else and it'll cheer you up. But that doesn't mean that you've healed and moved on. It's just like, using the broken leg analogy, like, oh, we're going to just put all this morphine and painkillers in your leg and go run around and have fun. Well, it's like, no, you might need to rest for a little bit. So I think actually it's better for you not to just try to escape from the pain, but actually go into the pain and understand what's going on. If you date right now, you probably won't be able to create a good relationship. So it would be just something casual to distract yourself. And also, let's not forget how you said the relationship with her started, that you weren't in a good state of mind. And I think that's part of what contributed to creating a relationship that didn't have a solid foundation and didn't start for the right reasons. So if you were to start something now, it might make your pain shorter in some ways. To me, actually, it would just be covering the pain, so it'd still be there. But to me, it would just create new problems for you that wouldn't actually be genuine healing. But people mistake the lack of pain or reduction of pain with healing, and they're not always the same thing.
And can I ask one more question?
Of course, yeah. We have about 5-6 more minutes. I'll stay with you till the end. So go ahead.
Awesome. Do you see a low self-esteem on me? Because so many people said, hey, you're much better than her, educationally, family-wise, situation, you never get married, no child, you're a good-looking guy. Something like that they told me.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, as you said, why you start such a relationship from the first day, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, is it because of low self-esteem on me, or what other things,
Well, yeah, low self-esteem is this very, and I'll talk about it, and I think it's very important. It could be a very general term, but definitely to me, it sounds like, self-esteem seems to play a part in a few aspects of what you're talking about. One is starting the relationship with her, and to me, you not wanting to get that close, and choosing someone that you couldn't get that close to because of her situation. Could be because you didn't want to get so close because you didn't know how someone would be if you fully committed to them. Would they want to stay with you? What happens there? The way you've described her in other ways tells me she's probably the type of person that can make you feel very good initially, as far as giving very extreme types of attention and compliments. So maybe that's something that appealed to you. Was she that way? Like when she would make you feel good, it was very good? Like she would talk about you in a very, very positive way? Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's the thing, is that can make us, feel really good and happy in that moment, but it's usually not that genuine as you were describing. And then for me, where you really see it is the way you talked about this other guy she was with, you said he is better than me. That part it definitely seems to be related to self-esteem as well. I think that's why seeing him and her together, of course, there was the trauma of just seeing her with another man, but it seems like seeing her with him also created a different type of wound, or opened up a different wound or old wound about how you feel about yourself. And that's what's been so devastating, and I think pushed you even deeper and darker into the depression.
Yeah, and one more question I forgot to tell you. I had a connection to her, which I asked her about this behavior. Why you saw me? At least you can have a respect to me, or why did you behave such with this behavior, with this action, with touching or so on?
Yeah.
And the answer I got from her, she somehow told my friend, I wanted him to just forget about me. This is what the answer. That's why I did such a thing. When he saw me in this way, he forgot about me. This is what she meant.
Yeah, I don't know. It's possible, but I think generally someone making a decision for someone else, I'm going to hurt you because somehow it's in your benefit long term, isn't great. I don't think that's fair. It could be why, but we know why she did it. We probably won't know. It could be what you just said. That was it. It could be she was trying to hurt you. The way you've described her, there tends to be a feeling of wanting to hurt the other person. So she maybe knew it would bother you, and so it wasn't she had such a good intention necessarily. She could have just wanted to hurt you. Maybe she felt rejected by you, that you didn't want to marry her, so she wanted to give you that same feeling. It's hard to say if that's what it was. I would spend less time, though, trying to analyze and understand her completely and why she did what she did, because we won't get that. But it's focus more on yourself, why you did what you did, why you picked her, why the relationship went the way it did, and then why you were so hurt. Of course, it's painful, but the way you're describing it seems like it's bringing up something deeper, which is very painful, very difficult, but it also can mean that you can heal in a way that makes you much stronger on the other end. So I know people say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and I like the quote, although I don't think it always does, because sometimes we just can get hurt. But in this case, it can make you stronger if you actually go into the pain. If you avoid the pain, you won't actually grow from it and heal. And that's why I'm glad you're going to therapy. And, I would recommend going to therapy for a while. Don't just think, well, I'm going through a breakup, I'm going through a depression, let me go for a little while, I'm going to feel better. But really go into this in a way of like, I get to learn about myself better, figure out what's going on, and then see what I want in the future. So I hope you'll go for, even at least a year of therapy. Don't think of it as like a short-term thing, but a long-term commitment.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah. But thank you so much for calling. Yes, it was nice talking to you. Best of luck to you. Take care.
Thank you so much. It
Okay.
was an honor. Thank
My
you.
pleasure. Bye-bye. All right, that brings us to the end of today's show. Again, the book of the week for this week is Hive Mind, The New Science of Tribalism in Our Divided World by Sarah Rose Kavanaugh. And again, a big thanks to Neda and Talla from the ISG, the Iranian student group at UCLA, for joining me to talk about the peace panel that is next Thursday, November 21st from 6 to 8 p.m. on the UCLA campus at Royce Hall. If you're in the LA area, I hope to see you there. I'll be part of the panel for that night. All right. Thank you to Ghazala here in the studio and everyone who called and listened. You've been listening to In Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee. Have a wonderful day.